Well, Scream Queens continues to do everything right in one of its most entertaining episodes yet. Hey guys, Cameron for Scream Queens, Season 2, Episode 2, Warts and All, and I was definitely looking forward to this episode. As you guys know, I really did like last week's premiere. I thought it was very solid overall, and really seemed like the right direction for this show. And I have to say that not only was this episode better, but I really think this episode, they're really doing everything right, I have to say. I mean, honestly, I'm loving this season. I mean, we're only 2 episodes in, but I really feel that they're going to do the right stuff this season, and that's basically not take it seriously at all. And that's what I want this show to be. I don't want it to be a show that takes itself seriously. It's meant to poke fun of horror. Let's poke fun of horror. And this episode definitely did that pretty well. I think, like I said in my intro, this was by far some of the most fun I've ever had with this show. There honestly were some hilarious moments in this episode and some great reintroductions to characters, but let's just get into it, because I definitely do want to talk about it. Starting off with the first scene, which I thought was great. I really did love the way this first scene was done, because we see very early on that obviously, the girl, the wolf girl, I can't think of her name right now, but Catherine, she was killed, but Chanel number 5 was spared, we see, and it obviously makes sense. I mean, Chanel number 5 is a character that I feel they could do a lot more with, and I'm glad to see she's sticking around, because I can't really imagine what the show would be like if it was just 2 Chanels. I really can't. I don't see the Chanels except for the 3 of them. I see the 3 of them. I can't really imagine just one of them. I mean, yes, Chanel, Emma Roberts is good on her own, but I want to see Chanel number 3 and Chanel number 5. But anyway, she's questioned by the police, and she says that she was attacked by this giant plant, which is absurd, but honestly, that is what the Green Meanie, which, yes, that is the name of the killer this season, the Green Meanie, that is what it looks like. It looks like a giant plant, and though I will say, definitely a creepier villain. I mean, definitely you get some creepier vibes, and Catherine's body is missing, and everyone now believes that number 5 is, in fact, the murderer, because she's just doesn't seem like it's something that could actually be true. And the police officer, because she hasn't graduated high school, and the Chanels, she feels that because she hasn't graduated high school, that's obviously a reason why. And the Chanels basically say it's because she's jealous of them, because of the fact that, and this is something that I thought they actually touched upon very well in this episode, that things that Chanel did to her in the past are actually coming back to haunt her in the second season. And as funny as it was, it honestly is kind of sad, because number 5, she couldn't get a date in, the sorority, because Chanel started that lie that she had teeth in her, vagina and things like that. But now she wanted this fresh new start in the hospital, and already it seems like she can't find anyone. And, Chanel already has Holt's, and it seems like, Chanel number 3 is already warming up to Cassidy. She doesn't seem to have anyone, and they basically say that it's because she's jealous of them. So right off the bat, I thought this was a really good start. I really did like the way it was done. A lot of great quips from Chanel and things like that, and I definitely really thought it was a great start off to the episode. And then we get what I'm guessing is going to be the formula for this season, where we see the patient of the week, which I so far like the way this is going. I like that it's a patient of the week. Do I want it to be that patient getting killed every single week? No, but I thought it worked in this episode. We see a new patient, Tyler, who is brilliantly played by Colton Haynes. It's been a while since I've seen Colton Haynes on anything, but he did a great job in this episode. He comes to the hospital, and he's literally covered in warts. That's why this episode's called Warts and All. Covered from head to toe. He has no money to pay for the expensive treatment, unfortunately, and, he wants to do something about this, because obviously he's covered in warts, and I thought that was interesting that we saw that there. So, obviously, Holt says that they're going to try to get him a cure, but they're not certain if they're going to be able to. So Zayday then goes to Chamberlin, and we're kind of getting a repeat of Zayday and Earl. The difference is this is so much more interesting than what was going on with Zayday and Earl. Earl was the most boring, lifeless character, one of many boring, lifeless characters the show had last year. It was Earl, Pete, Grace, characters like that are extinct on this season, and I'm glad. I mean, they're not extinct, they're out there, but I like that we haven't mentioned them, because they just weren't memorable characters. And Chamberlin already is so much more animated than Earl. I mean, Chamberlin, I'm really loving this character. This is someone who, he is the candy striper in the hospital. He says the wrong things at the wrong time, and at the same time, he's doing whatever he can to acquire a date with Zayday. And honestly, it's kind of cute what's going on there. But she has the suspicion that about Munch's motivations for opening up the hospital. The fact that, when this happened, that Munch was with number 5, number 3, and Chanel before, she was definitely with them before this supposed murder happened. And then what ended up happening, of course, was they're there and she's there, and Munch has kind of just stood back, and she doesn't know why she's gotten them all back, especially because of the fact that Munch has openly stated that she hates the Chanels. I mean, if you remember last season, when she was initially introduced, Munch wanted to do something about the Chanels. She thought that they were, tormenting people, and Zayday does not really get the reason why Munch really wants the Chanels there. And basically, it seems that Munch already seems to be the first potential killer. Unlike last season, though, I do like that this isn't, as frustrating, because I honestly am enjoying Munch this season, believe it or not. I know it's surprising, but I'm actually liking what they're giving D. Munch to do. Why? Because they're actually giving her funny stuff to work with, and I think they're doing a pretty good job with that. Without, fucking, what was his name? Grace's dad. I can't think of his name right now. But without him and without, Gigi, Munch is a much more interesting character and a lot more fun to watch. And especially when she's the only, adult character on the show, I really am liking what she's doing. Because everyone else is like a millennial. I mean, I would consider them adults. I'm talking about, old adults. Yes, there's Ingrid, but Munch is they're definitely using her very well there. So we see, and I did like, again, there was some great competition between Chanel and Zayday, with them kind of getting mad at each other. I like the way that was done. But Chanel and Holt then go to the movies for a date, and they're throwing handfuls of popcorn onto the ground, and it seems that these two are pretty much officially dating, which I thought was interesting to see. But Holt has, as we know, that very wild hand. It's starting to act up, groping Chanel's breasts and grabbing candy from the people behind them, which was very funny. And she's actually happy about it because of the fact that she hasn't had any sort of contact with men in that way in a couple years. So she's like, all right, just go ahead, grope me. I mean, that's totally something that Chanel would say. And I like that Holt's hand seems to have a mind of its own. It's a really ridiculous plot. It's a really ridiculous plot. But again, something I think season's doing so well is just these outrageous things. I mean, Scream Queens in general should not take itself seriously. And I like that this season they don't seem to be doing that. And they're really utilizing the whole fuck reality of it all. I mean, nothing going on this season is anything realistic, and I like that. Realism is pretty much out the window, and I think that definitely, in a show like this, definitely needs to happen. So, Chad, we see, spots him going for a kiss. He's definitely not happy, and I really did like the way that was set up. But we then see number 5 is getting closer to Tyler in this episode, and I actually really did like what we did with number 5 here, because she goes off about her dateless life to Tyler, and kind of like what Chanel has done to her, and how she thought this could be a fresh new start. And when he shows her that he actually used to be really genuinely attractive, and someone that she used to like, he becomes determined to get the money for his procedure, because this seems like someone who number 5 could actually relate to, someone who has been in the same position as her, because he's had this condition pretty much all his life, and well, not all his life, but he's had this condition for a while, and he hasn't been able to get a date. She hasn't either. It seems like they work very well together, and I thought Colin Haynes and Abigail Breslin in general had very good chemistry in this episode. And let me just say, I know a lot of people complain about Abigail Breslin's acting, but she's really doing a great job this season, and I've always thought Abigail Breslin was a good actor, but definitely there was something about her last season that didn't really fit in here, and I feel like this season she's really found her footing, and that goes for a lot of the same characters. Like, a lot of the characters I wasn't so keen about last season, I'm definitely starting to like more this season. They're doing a good job with that. So Chanel's then working a late shift, and the Red Devil just appears out of nowhere. I'm like, what the hell's the Red Devil doing here? I thought we were doing the Green Meanie. And she's obviously terrified, but we quickly see that it's actually Chad dressed as the Red Devil in order to scare her. And I thought it was interesting that we found out that, remember at the very end of last season when Chanel was attacked, I thought that they were just going to abandon that. I thought that they weren't going to talk about that, but we find out that that was actually Chad doing that to initially scare her, and they haven't talked since then, which is totally something that Chad would do. I mean, I forgot how much I miss the character of Chad Radwell, but damn, do we get some great stuff with him in this episode. And I know Glenn Powell's not a main character, but if this is what we're going to get a Chad this season, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I do think he's going to die. I will say that I think he's going to die this season because he's not a main character, but I really am loving already what we're getting of him. He declares that he wants her back before disappearing back tonight. He'll do anything he can to get her back, and I really do like this rivalry between Chad and Holt. It's very funny. Chad, we meet Chad's constantly screaming friend, Randall. He has this exaggerated startle threshold where just anything you say kind of freaks him out, and he just can't stop screaming, and I love the scene where Holt says we don't have a cure for that, and Munch talks about that's what they're supposed to do because it's the cure hospital where the incurable are cured. And again, we don't know if that's actually true, if that's just a bunch of bullshit, but while being checked out, he's overlooked by Holt and Chad's dick measuring contest over Chanel, which I thought was pretty funny. I definitely did like the way that was done overall, and you can just tell the tension between these two right away. I thought that was definitely funny to see. We got a good backstory with Chad and Randall. I believe they were in the military or something. I don't know. It was pretty funny overall was going on there, but that's the reason that Chad's there. But he's obviously going to stay there because he's going to try to win back Chanel. He will do anything in his power to win her back. He doesn't care how he'll do it. He will just find a way to do it, and I thought that was very funny to see. So number 5 is turned to the American public in order to ask for donations. We get one, and it reminded me of those ASPCA videos. They did such a great job of parodying that. Even with the Sarah McLachlan, In the Arms of an Angel sound in the background, it wasn't that song, but it very much sounded like that. I thought that was very funny the way that was done, and totally something that number 5 would do. Because let's face it, out of the 3 Chanels, number 5 is the one that's not really always been there. She doesn't really make the best of decisions. Even number 3, even though she doesn't seem very intelligent, she at least, I think, wouldn't do something like this. I thought it was pretty, it honestly does kind of make sense, obviously because she's desperate, but I also thought it was pretty funny. So Chanel advises her to not wait until after Tyler's procedure to date him because then he won't want her anymore. And yes, she's taunting him, but at the same time, I think she kind of has a point. The reason that number 5 and Tyler go so well together is not because of the fact that, they have good chemistry. It's the fact that they're basically kind of the same person, that they're both kind of undateable right now. No one really wants to be with them, and they're kind of bonding over this unique circumstance. So it is kind of sad in that regard, which I thought they actually did a pretty good job of. They gave a lot of depth to number 5 in this plot, and it's definitely a hell of a lot more than she got last year. Last year, the problem was there were way too many characters, and this season they reduced it to only about 10 or 12 characters, and I think it's already doing the show a lot more to having just a few characters over, a bunch of characters. So Zayday and Chamberlin are doing research on the hospital, and basically we see, they find out about this Halloween party, which let me just tell you, there was this scene, we don't see Ingrid much in this episode, but we do get this one scene where they're walking through the halls, and they see Ingrid, she's totally drugged up, and they're like, what are you doing here, and all she asks them for is a list about the Chanels. And I'm not just saying, a list of them in general. She wants a to-do list of everything they've been doing. She wants to research them. But for some reason, she's only fixated on the Chanels. And she's not focused on Zayday and Chamberlin and, Holt and all those people. She's only focused on the Chanels. So if this doesn't say that she's the killer, I don't know what does. Because I think Ingrid is definitely working with the killer. And I do think the Chanels are definitely there for some sort of reason to get killed. I mean, I really think that Ingrid is after them. And when she talks about how, she wants to eat them for lunch, I genuinely think that we could be headed in that direction. But again, we only saw her in one scene, so I can't say too much about it. But again, Kirstie Alley, killing is this character. Very happy to see that she's getting pretty much all the praise she deserves, because she definitely was something we were missing from last season. There wasn't really someone to bring Chanel down. Grace was supposed to be that character, but she was such a priss and a phony that it just didn't really work. And I think Ingrid already is doing such a great job at just having that no prisoners attitude, someone who's not afraid to take the Chanels down. I can't wait to see the way this is going to play out throughout the rest of the season. So Zayday and Chamberlin then find out about this Halloween party where literally the entire staff was murdered. That scene was so over the top, but it was also really funny. I love the scene where I think it was Laura Bell Bundy's character as Venus, and then it was I can't remember what it was for Jerry O'Connell, but Jerry O'Connell is just, I've always liked Jerry O'Connell. I think he's just a lot of fun, and even when he's bad, I think he's just a fun guy. He's really fun to watch, and the head nurse ends up catching them down there, we see, and that scene was pretty brutal. I mean, when they're all murdered, and basically, we hear, I think we're alone now playing. I mean, everyone gets murdered. It's very over the top, but it's also very funny. Kind of reminds me, again, of those, like, campy sort of hospital movies. I think they did a pretty good job with that. But Ingrid catches them down there again. She doesn't know why they're there. They don't know why she's there. But something about her, I just do not trust this woman. I mean, anything she says, she just seems so sketchy, and I really do not trust her. And out of all the people, I think she definitely is one of the head suspects to be the killer. I really think that Ingrid could be one of the killers. And I don't know. Now, it could be, more than one killer again, because I know they did that with Red Devil. So I don't know if it's more than one killer, but I think Ingrid, if she's not the killer, she's definitely working with the killer. I just don't trust Ingrid right now, but we'll have to see. We then see Chad and Holt are taking showers in the empty locker room, in the employee locker room. It seems to be more of a power play for Chad against Holt, who is more worthy of Chanel, but it really is kind of a little bit homoerotic, and they decide to play a squash game. Winner gets Chanel, and of course, winner gets Chanel. So I thought that was pretty funny overall, the way that scene was done. And the fact that we saw Holt, I mean, I just thought it was a lot of fun to see these two compete. John Stamos was really killing as this character, and I think both Holt and Chad, they're both equally very funny, and they work very well in these scenes together. So number 5 is out with Tyler, where a couple of boys start making fun of him because of the way he looks, and I loved this scene. I mean, we haven't seen this kind of rage in number 5 in a while, but it reminded me of what they tried to do last year. Do you remember that scene last year where those guys started acting a bit discriminatory against the girls, wanting them for sex objects, and they completely just beat them all up and just went to town on them? That scene didn't make any sense. And why? Because it didn't go with the characters. There was no context with that scene. It felt completely out of context. It didn't go with what we were setting up, and that's something that season 1 had a problem with. It really had a problem with establishing these characters at first. Now that we know these characters, though, this scene, I think, kind of was a reprieve from that scene. I honestly think this scene, they tried to do something similar, and it actually worked this time, because she ends up smashing a plate over one of their heads. She proceeds to beat them up, and I love how she's like, sometimes I get a little bit angry. I thought that was very funny, and again, very much like what we saw with that scene. The only difference is that it actually worked this time. It made sense, obviously. I mean, we know why she beat them up. She really cares about Tyler. She doesn't get why people are making fun of him, and I thought that actually worked very well here, because again, it actually, made sense this time as to why they actually did that. So I thought that worked in that regard. I thought that actually was very well done. Again, very funny scene. So Zayday and Chamberlin decide to corner Munch about the hospital's past murders, and she comes clean about why she started the hospital. She has an incurable disease and I thought this was interesting. We actually found out that it's not just that she had this dream to make a hospital, is that she has an incurable disease that no other doctors have been able to identify. And obviously it's something very serious, and I think that was very interesting what we saw there. And knowing that Munch has this, it basically gives us a thought that holy shit, Munch could actually die. And I could see them killing off Munch, and it would be interesting if they did, just because of the fact that Munch is what brought us to this. But if they actually do kill off Munch, I mean, they already said this season that they're gonna kill off some major characters. No one is safe this season, and we definitely do see that. So Munch is alone in the hospital when the green mask killer attacks, and just like with the Red Devil, Munch proves she is not a force to be taken lightly. She tries to get a look under the mask, and it looks like she's about to unmask the killer. I'm like, don't unmask the killer in episode 2, but obviously the Green Meanie gets away, and I gotta say, the Green Meanie already is much smarter than the Red Devil. The Red Devil really was not that smart. I mean, the Red Devil was smart toward the end, but a lot of the things the Red Devil did, I mean, the Red Devil could have easily killed someone or sliced them, and this killer just doesn't really give a fuck. I mean, this killer clearly, it's someone who obviously wants to terrorize the hospital, and it's not just going to kill someone like Munch. It's going to kill someone bigger, and we definitely do see that. And basically she tries to get a look under the mask. Number 3 and Cassidy come running and distract her. The killer is able to get away. Cassidy and Holt, they think she's crazy, but obviously Munch is trying to tell them that she's not crazy and that she actually did see it. I honestly did kind of feel bad for Munch, because she was so close to finding out the killer, and once again the killer got away. So I honestly really did feel bad for her there. But again, going back to Ingrid, it does definitely make sense, because we've known this killer has been around since the 80s. I'm assuming the Green Meanie has been around since the 80s, so if that's true, then maybe Ingrid could be the killer. We'll talk about that, though. Definitely very interesting overall. I like the way that was done, and I thought they did a pretty good job with that. So update where Holt's uncontrollable hand ends up leaving a note, which again, very strange. We don't know what this hand does, but clearly this hand does have a mind of its own. I think we kind of get the sense in this episode that Holt can't exactly control it, and definitely is interesting to see, because again, it's ridiculous, but it's just kind of working. I mean, what they're doing so well this season is they're doing things that are ridiculous and completely just absurd, but they're sticking with it. They're not just abandoning it because they want to stick to a status quo. No, they're going for it, and I think they're actually doing a pretty good job of it, because this honestly is pretty funny. I'm honestly really curious in seeing where this is going, because I think it's honestly really fun. So Munch then calls Denise in, who, you guys know I was not a fan of Denise, but the second she's talking about Zayday being the killer, not gonna lie, I was in stitches. I thought it was hilarious. She still thinks that Zayday's shady, she still thinks that Zayday could be the killer, and I don't know what's gonna get Denise to realize this, but she seems to be so fixated on Zayday. This might get annoying after a while. Right now it's pretty funny, though, just the fact she still thinks that. But Munch just wants her name cleared. You know, she doesn't care who the killer really is. She just wants to prove to them that it's not her. Because, yes, Zayday and Chamberlin know she has this disease, but the Chanels are convinced that Munch is the killer. And she wants to do whatever she can to prove that's not her. I love that Denise didn't mention Quantico, because the second that they said Denise can become a Quantico agent, I'm like, she's going to mention Quantico. And she did. I thought that was pretty funny overall. I thought they did a pretty good job with that. And I like that they did bring in Denise. And I like she's not a main character also, because as much as I did like the character, I don't want to see her every episode, so I think they're doing a pretty good job with just bringing her in when they need her. So the squash game has started, and Holt is actually kicking Chad's ass, which is really funny. He tries to leave, but Chad declares that he's going to become a doctor, even though it takes so many years. He'll do whatever he can to get Chanel back, and again, I love he's doing all this just to get Chanel back. Also, I forgot to say, I love the scene where Holt's talking about how he touched Chanel's breast and how much of a pussy Chad thinks he is. I thought that was so funny, because again, we know how obsessed Chad is with sex and how he feels about sex, and I just thought that was really funny. You can tell they're not changing his character at all, and I love that, because that was one of my favorite parts last season, and I still love Chad Ravel's character. I think he's awesome. So Holt threatens him, and he basically tells him that his hand will come after him, and again, makes me wonder, does he have control over this hand, or does this hand have a mind of its own? I mean, again, we don't really know how it works, but I think we're definitely getting the sense that the story we heard last week, there are definitely a lot more, important details that Holt left out for a reason, and we don't really know what that is yet. So Munch, Denise, Chanel, and number 3 then go to visit Hester about the attacks, and I loved seeing Hester back, and I have to say that, again, Lea Michele, what I like about this is that we can't suspect that she's a killer, because they already said in the beginning of the season that Hester will not be the killer, but she is in fact associated with the killer, and she knows a lot about the killer, which again makes sense. So I think what this does is it gives Hester this role where, we're able to see her, but we're not constantly saying, is she the killer? Could she still be? Because that would be way too predictable if they made her the killer twice, and I'm glad that they openly said she's not the killer, because I don't want Hester to be the killer this season. I want someone else to be the killer. I think it'd be a lot more interesting if we did that, and I like that she's able, basically she wants to be traded to being moved to their hospital and beauty supplies with information on the killer. She's in an asylum right now. We definitely got a lot of Silence of the Lambs-esque vibes there, which I thought was very funny, and basically she has information on the killer. She talks about how it's definitely connected to what happened in on that Halloween, but we don't really find out much else but that. But again, just seeing Hester for that little bit, I thought they did a pretty good job with that, and again, they're using these characters pretty well, and I think Hester definitely was a good example of that. So number 5 and Tyler then get back to the hospital. The other 2 Chanels surprise them with news that they've gotten the money for his procedure, and Chad has gone to a private detective in order to find out about the donor of Holt's hand. We get this ridiculous monologue that it was of a murdering squash player, we find out, and basically that he has the hand of a serial killer, apparently. That's something that we didn't know last week, that he didn't tell us. And Chad confronts Holt about his serial killer hand and how he's going to tell people about it, and how he's definitely going to do something about it, and how Chanel going to react when she finds out she's dating a serial killer. That's going to be very funny and very interesting. I can't wait to see the way that turns out. But Zayday and Chamberlin are looking into Munch's illness. She comes to the conclusion that Munch is ailing from Carew, which apparently is when you eat something that a cannibal would eat, which is very strange, but it's apparently from eating brains in New Guana. She was with this guy, I guess, and they were at this retreat, and he was actually in a cult where they were all cannibals, and she's eating brain cells, so she does in fact have Carew, and apparently it's so serious that she only has a few months left to live, which I don't know if that part is true. My question is this actually what's going on, or do Zayday and Chamberlin actually suspect that she is the killer, and they're just trying to distract her from what's going on? That part I can't really tell, and I'm definitely interested in seeing what's going to happen with that. But again, it gives us this thought that holy shit, Munch could die, and I think it's interesting the way they're doing that. So number 5 is in talking to Tyler. He's found out something about the killer, and before he can tell her, he's wheeled away for surgery. You know, we see that he actually does know something about what's going on. So he's wheeled away. She's obviously very happy because she's thinking, okay, now he's going to get the surgery he needs. Only it's the killer who must end him before he reveals their secret, we see. Because Brock and Holt and Cassidy, they're somewhere else, and the Chanels run to his rescue, but they're too late. Tyler and number 5 Chance had a hot boyfriend has ended. Tyler's killed, and honestly a very cool killing with the laser and everything, but now they know that a killer is in fact on the loose and that they have a new serial killer, and that is the way the episode ends. Let's just get into this episode overall, because there's definitely lots to talk about. Like I said, really great episode. I really thought this was just highly entertaining. I really did love it overall. But there's a lot that we found out in this episode, definitely. First of all, like I said, I don't want them to do, one person checks in the hospital and then gets killed instantly. I don't want them to do that, because it just seems like it's really predictable, and that was the problem with last season, that it just became very predictable into who was going to get killed and how are they going to get killed and things like that. This season seems like they're going in a much more unpredictable direction. Tyler seemed like a character who might actually live. I honestly thought that he was going to because of him in number 5, but no, again, they ruined that very quickly, and it gives us the thought that no one really is safe, that definitely the Green Meanie is a lot different from the Red Devil, and we're already seeing that. I mean, he doesn't really seem to care about confrontation. He doesn't seem to care when people talk to him, or he, she, whatever. The Green Meanie in general just seems to be a lot more savage and a lot more of a smarter killer than the Red Devil ever was. The Red Devil was just a student. The Green Meanie is much more astute with their killings. Definitely, you definitely do see that. I think that definitely is interesting. As far as this whole revelation with Munch, again, are Zayday and Chamberlin, do they actually believe that Munch does have Carew, or are they just trying to distract her and they actually think she's a killer? That's something I'm not really sure, and I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes. I love what's going on with Chat and Holt. I think it's so funny overall, and again, Chad telling Shinaba this is going to be so funny. I can't wait to see their confrontation and their whole thing that's going on. I think it's just a lot of fun. But the question is, again, does the hand have a mind of its own, or does Holt have some sort of control? We don't really know. I'm definitely getting a Evil Dead 2 aspect from this, and I absolutely love that. One of my favorite scenes in Evil Dead 2, if you guys remember, was when Ash's hand started doing things on its own and he didn't have control over it. That scene was so ingenious and so funny, and I don't know if it's going to end in the same way, because again, it's Fox and they can only be, so careful with what they show, but I'm very interested in seeing where this goes. It's very ridiculous and absurd, but it's actually working really well, because again, they're sticking to the absurdity, they're sticking to the ridiculousness, and nothing about this season is reality. Everything about this is ridiculous, and it completely works because of that, and that's something that last season, they kind of half did. They were so focused on, let's appeal to a certain demographic because they didn't have that audience yet, and now that they know they have an audience, they can take a lot more risks, and you definitely do see that, and I'm really enjoying that overall. Ingrid, like I said, I think this makes a lot of sense how Ingrid could be the killer, because again, we know that killer Hester even said that killer's been there since the 1980s. So if the killer's been there since the 1980s, you know, Ingrid's been there, I believe, pretty much the whole time. Either she was working there or she's been working there. I mean, we don't know much about Ingrid's background except that she is the lead doctor. You know, she is the not the warden. What do you call it? Like the director of the hospital, and she's after the Chanels. But just the fact that she's so intent to go after the Chanels, we know that number 5 was spared. That alone makes me think that she is definitely associated with the Green Meanie. I'm not gonna say she is the Green Meanie, but I think she definitely is associated with the Green Meanie. There's obviously a reason why we didn't see her till this scene. I mean, that was they did a very good way of doing that. But I think they're also doing a good job of showing us, you know, who's the killer, who's not. Not everyone in this show is a suspect. The people who are most suspicious to me are Holt because of his hand, things like that. He definitely could be a suspect. Also Cassidy. This guy is very mysterious, and I can't wait to see more of his background, but I just don't really know about Cassidy. I don't really trust him right now, and I don't really know, you know, what's really going on with him. Number 3 is really the only Chanel we haven't gotten a huge thing with yet, but I'm sure they're saving it for the next episodes. But overall, guys, I really enjoyed this episode overall. I thought, like I said, very entertaining. One of the most fun episodes I've had with Scream Queen so far, and especially, you know, from me, where I was last season, where I was kind of like, I don't know about the show, to this season where I'm completely on board with pretty much everything, really to show how far the show has come and really to show how different the season is. And honestly, I really think this season could work out very well. I'm really enjoying it so far. Unfortunately, we have to wait 2 weeks, but apparently there's 2 episodes, which is really weird. But let me know what you guys thought of this episode overall. Loved your thoughts on it. I'm really loving this season. That's my review. Hope you guys enjoy it. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for tonight's episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.